The basin's cold lingered in Jarek's bones long after he and Varik left the chamber of carvings. It was not the ache of winter or the numbness that follows too much pain, it was a clean quiet threaded through the noise. The 7 rings still turned, yes, nothing in him had grown small, but their scraping had softened into a rough harmony that did not sand his breath raw. Even the hunger had taken 2 steps back, sitting on its haunches as if undecided whether to lunge or watch. They walked the long way to the market. Varik said it was to keep feet from learning only one road. Jarek suspected it was also to give the quiet a chance to dig in before the square tore at it. The tunnels on this route wore older scars, chisel marks half swallowed by mineral drip, chalk arrows rubbed by hands that had once been calloused and were now dust. In 3 places, iron nails had been driven into stone and then sawn off flush, like sentences cut short. Jarek touched one with 2 fingers. It felt warm, which made no sense and made all the sense in the city. Anchors, Varik said without looking back. The kind made by men who could not write reports and did not ask to. Jarek rubbed the nail's head once and let his hand drop. We should set more. We are, Varik said. Just not the kind you can point to and get a medal for. The square smelled of yesterday's oil and today's bread. Stalls had multiplied like mushrooms after rain, crowding around the cracked fountain where a pipe fought to be a spring. The pear seller waved a cloth over her baskets to bat off soot. When she saw Jarek, she made a face at him that would have made a lesser man apologize for being tall. You, she said, and held up a fruit with the authority of a judge. Buy something or you scare off the coins. Varik peeled a coin from someplace knives like to hide and flicked it without breaking stride. The pear seller caught it and bit it to pretend she was a person who checked. She wasn't. She knew Varik didn't pay in metal he couldn't eat. And you, she added to Jarek, stop walking like a problem. I am a problem, he said before he could choose something cleverer. She snorted. You're a boy with too much heat and not enough breakfast. That's a kind of problem the square understands. She thrust a smaller pear into his hand and slapped his knuckles when he tried to give it back. Eat while you're still someone my mother would call thin. He bit because refusing would have made the crowd feel like a knife. The flesh was hard and sweet and more real than prophecy. The hunger watched with bored disdain, it did not care for pears. The band on his wrist warmed a little as if pleased by anything that floated. A chalk line curved near the fountain, one of the children's circles, redrawn the way Jarek liked, thicker at the elbow, whole even where the stone was pitted. A boy crouched and inspected the curve with a squint too serious for his age. The girl from the pump run stood over him with her arms folded and her hair more unruly than ever. When she saw Jarek, she pretended not to, then failed at pretending and lifted her chin. Better, Jarek said, nodding at the ring. You remembered the wrist. She rolled one shoulder with the indifference of a sovereign. He kept making the line thin where the stone dips. The boy defended himself with a scowl. It slants. My chalk caught. Your hand caught, she said, kinder than her words. Hold it up when the ground lies. Jarek crouched and set his band on the ring's edge. It hummed faintly and stayed where he left it, as if the chalk had learned to be stone for a moment. This is yours, he told the girl. Keep it off your bones. Keep it near your work. She picked the band up with the reverence of a child who isn't sure if a thing is sacred and has decided to behave as if it is until told otherwise. What does it do? It remembers, he said. Sometimes that's enough to keep other things from forgetting you. Varik's crimson eye clicked once. Teaching makes names heavier, he murmured. Jarek stood and watched the square for a length of breath he could count with ribs. The cult had not set a crate today. The gangs had exchanged knives for coats with deeper pockets. 2 guild scribes stood by a stall selling nails and argued about the price of iron in a way that made the nails nervous. Captain Voss was not visible. That meant she was near. Work, Varik said softly, as if naming the weather. They moved toward the vent shaft where doors liked to tease stones before they split them. A seam did not open. A messenger did, his chest heaving, a stripe of soot across his nose like a war paint the city had applied without permission. Varik, he blurted, not bothering with sir or master. Guild says come. Captain says now. West run off. Hum's wrong. Varik did not waste breath on swearing. Show, he said, and the boy spun, eager as a dog who had found a path and wanted praise. On the way, Jarek felt the quiet he had pulled from the basin begin to fray, not from panic, not even from the hum that drifted up through metal, but from attention. It was a kind observation, almost eyes tracking him without hate, people stepping aside to give him room without kneeling. Still, it plucked at him. Quiet likes corners. Stairs make corners wide as squares. Breathe, Varik said under the din. The city is learning how to watch you without strangling itself. Let it learn. The run-off hall was smaller than the pump hall but meaner. Its wheels were hand-cranked, its grates were patchwork, its warning bells had been hung by men who measured their lives in spills. The hum had already set teeth on edge by the time they reached the door. Voss stood with her visor down and her shoulders bare of pretense. 2 wedges flanked the hall with shields stacked and slates dull. 7 apprentices in stained aprons clutched tools as if afraid to put them down in case the tools learned to run. You again, Voss said by way of greeting, which in her mouth was close to thank you. Door is flirting. I prefer my doors to court with petitions. Where, Varik said. Voss pointed with her chin. Center grate. It keeps, breathing. The grate lifted and fell almost imperceptibly, as if the floor had lungs. Jarek set his palms to the metal and felt the forge mutter. The rings aligned with a click so small he wondered if he had imagined it. We do this the same way, he said. Chains on the shape. Temper the pull. Keep your men from vomit. Helpful, Voss said, deadpan. Before the next 7 count, a voice crawled along the hall like soot under a door. No need to temper. Let it feed. Sister Male stepped from a side run with 3 of her robed faithful behind. She had cleaned her hair since the brazier night, which only made the half-ash starker. The black flames at her knuckles were small and precise, the way a tutor's cane is more frightening for being thin. Voss did not raise her hand, she did not lower it either. This is my hall, sister. This is the city's throat, Male replied without deference. You can choke on it or swallow. He will show you how to eat. She did not look at Jarek when she said he. She did not need to. The sentence reached him like a hook. I am not your instrument, Jarek said. He did not make it a speech. He let the words fall like tools on a bench. Refusal, Male murmured, delighted. He grows truer. Varik moved his knife a finger's width so that light from a lamp ran along it as a bird schemes a stream. Apprentices who had not meant to watch the knife watched it anyway. Sister, he said in a tone that had kept men from bleeding out of stubbornness, stand where the captain tells you or we make a door out of your absence. Voss did not thank him. She did not need to. She jerked her head at a corner. Male drifted there like smoke that had decided, this once, to be polite while plotting. The hum deepened. The grate shuddered. The room tasted like nails. Jarek dropped to one knee, set the band on his wrist against the grate, and breathed until the count found his ribs without being begged. The seam opened with the ugliness of a wound torn on a rusty edge. What forced itself through at first had angles where water should have had curves and heat where water should have had indifference. Then it found enough shape to pretend to be alive, a long, slick thing with fins that were almost hands and eyes that did not blink, because blink belongs to mercy. Chains, Varik said, and Jarek did not wait for the end of the word. Gold lashed and hissed. The thing writhed in a way that made the human spine complain in sympathy. The hunger rose, not a roar, not a beg, not a bargain. A certainty. This is easy. This is food. Why hold a knife by the spine when you know where the handle is? Jarek set the thin ring over one chain and pulled, not to rip, to rub. The current scraped his bones as if annoyed to be taught manners. He gave it 7 heartbeats and then 7 more. The band warmed. The thing's shape began to remember it could be smaller. The seam cinched in a stitch a careful hand would be proud of. Male's voice cut sharp. Cowardice. The word startled laughter out of a few throats because it did not fit the work of a man who had his hands inside a river's wrongness. Jarek did not look at her. He kept the pull slow. The room held. Something moved at the run's mouth and made Varik's knife bare its teeth properly. 3 figures stood half-shadowed in the arch. For a heartbeat Jarek thought they were enforcers standing where enforcers ought not be. Then one stepped forward and the light found a face built by choices Jarek did not like recognizing. "Hello, teacher," the man said. He had the kind of bone that looks made for crowns or for heads to be broken on it. His hair was either clean or too proud for grease to matter. His right hand wore a gauntlet of thin iron plates that had been etched by someone who loved lines too tidy. But it was his eyes that made the band on Jarek's wrist go cold. One gleamed the pale blue of a calibrating slate. Varik's jaw did not move, but his voice did. "Ilya." The name hung heavy, like a slab pulled by 3 men and a stubborn mule. Male smiled too widely and too easily. "Our prince," she said. Varik did not lower his knife. He did not lift it either. "You said yes until your tongue forgot no." Ilya's smile had the sad patience of a tutor with a slow student. "I learned the cost of refusing gifts," he said. "Gifts do not stop being given because you turn your face away. Others take them. They do worse with them than you would have." He looked past Varik and let his gaze rest where Jarek worked. "So I take them." The seam wanted to widen at the sound of his voice, as if the hall itself had been told to obey that shape of sentence. Jarek tightened the chain around the wrong fish's spine until the metal shrieked and forced his breath to stay a count. Male put her palms together as if in prayer and failed to hide how much of a bargain it was. "I told you the crownless would lead," she said to Ilya, sweet as fat. "You will keep him from wasting fire." "I will keep him from killing himself politely," Ilya said. Voss's visor slanted. "You will leave my hall," she said with a contempt so crisp it should have snapped. Ilya lifted his gauntleted hand and turned the wrist. Runes lit along the plates like little mouths learning to say yes. The hum of the seam shifted in answer. Jarek felt the rings inside his chest answer, too, not with obedience, but with attention. The gauntlet was a small door, or a thief of doors, a thing that leaned on the work others had died for and called it leverage. "You want to temper," Ilya said mildly to Jarek, as if facing a friend and not a man kneeling in hot rain. "But you did not learn that temper without devouring first. We belong to the same furnace. Stop lying about it." Jarek could have said many things. He had a chest full of words people had tried to wed to him like unchosen spouses. He did not trust any of those to hold. He did not answer at all. He kept rubbing current along the thin ring until the seam's breath stuttered. The wrong fish made a sound halfway between a laugh and a drain unclogging. He pulled it smaller. Ilya sighed as if denied a better conversation and flicked his fingers. The gauntlet spat a thread of pale light, almost invisible if you did not know the taste of what the guild called measure. It caught the edge of one chain and bit through not the gold metal, but the song the metal had been singing. The chain went slack in Jarek's hand. The seam surged. Apprentices cried out. Shields buckled. The band on Jarek's wrist flared. The hunger lunged, delighted. "Yes. Finally. Drop your manners and eat." Varik moved without breaking a line he held in his mind between killing and not. His knife chose a trick Jarek had not seen since the first hunt, a cut that was not through flesh or water but across intention. The pale thread snapped and went blind. Voss stepped and the wedge stepped with her. The shields became a wall that believed in itself. "You'll need a cord to test that toy here," She told Ilya, even. If you want us to keep making more stories like this, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Azure Inkblade. Now, back to the chapter. And a warrant with my name spelled right. Ilya's gaze flicked to her with the backhand care of a man who will share a table with you later and tell you he sees your point after he has dissolved your legs. Captain, he said, polite and premature. As always, you are admirable. As always, doomed. He looked to Mail. Keep your children still. Do not tell me how to shepherd my light, Mail said primly, then shot Jarek a look as if to ask whether he liked the quality of man she had fetched, and whether he could imagine liking an easier quality instead if he would only stop refusing it. Jarek tuned them out. He found the chain song again and tuned it to the band. He set a second ring over his forearm, not of wire, not of water, but of witness the memory of chalk circles held by small hands, the weight of Voss choosing the lie that saved 7 stalls, the pear seller's fruit shoved at him because hunger has flavors that do not burn. He turned that ring until it sang. The wrong fish jerked. The seam cinched. The room made a sound men make when they think they see the end of a bad story and it turns into a road instead. Ilya's mouth thinned. Novice tricks, he said without any particular heat. He raised the gauntlet again, not a thread this time, but a net of that pale measure, the kind of lattice the guild loved, the kind that tried to divide a whole into so many safe, counted parts nothing wild remained. He cast it. Jarek lifted his arm and caught the net on the ring. The lattice strained. It did not quite split. It sagged the way a sermon does when a child laughs in the third row. For a moment just that the blue of the gauntlet's rune and the gold of the chain and the remembered white of the basin's cold made a color Jarek had no word for. The wrong fish soul broke like a current finally finding a bed it could sleep in. Jarek did not draw it into his ribs. He wound it around his wristband, soaked it into the thin ring, and let the last of it thread through the grate into water that had decided to be honest again. The seam closed as if embarrassed to have made such a fuss. Steam fell from the air in sheets. Shields hissed and cooled. Someone began to sob, and then to laugh, which is a common mistake men make in that order when they live. Mail clapped her hands as if he had performed the trick she had ordered. Refusal, she breathed. Yes. Ilya looked at Jarek, really looked. Whatever speech he had brought to carve the moment into his shape failed to find its mouth. For a heartbeat, his face belonged to a boy who had learned the wrong lesson well and missed the right one because it wasn't taught on clean slates. Varik's knife whispered 3 inches closer to the throat of the air. You can leave on the feet you came with, he said to Ilya. Or you can go home in a bowl. Voss did not smile. Listen to my colleague, she said to Ilya, tone like a level across a plank. He knows bowls. Ilya flexed the gauntlet and extinguished its light. We will speak again, he told Jarek, as if promising a kindness. When the hunger stops letting you pretend you are its jailer and not its apprentice. Jarek lifted his band. I am not your student, he said. Everyone is, Ilya said, and went, Mail's faithful folding around him like a suggestion he had not asked for and would later claim had always been his. The wedges did not stand down until the last hum had fled into pipework like a rat that knew the path to its nest. Then Voss rolled her shoulders and took her visor off and let the room see a face that had teeth because it carried too many names and not because it liked to bite. Payment, she said, without ceremony. You did not take the river into yourself. You did not make me write the day worse than it already was. She glanced at the apprentices, at the grates, at the nets that were now tools again instead of cages. And you resisted the urge to kill my problem where he stood, which would have been satisfying and catastrophic. Varik twitched something like a shrug. I would have only nicked him. Voss ignored the lie because it was polite. She looked at Jarek and for a breath did not speak as captain or ledger keeper. You could have made yourself heavier, she said. You made a tool instead. Her eyes lowered to the band. Keep doing that and I can keep pretending I can protect you. Pretend louder, he said, and surprised himself with it. He had not meant to joke. It was not exactly one. It was a request wearing a bad hat. Done, Voss said, which was as reckless as she allowed herself to be in public. Outside, the corridor felt larger, as if the door had gone out of the room and taken some of the air's pettiness with it. Varik slid his knife into wherever knives live when they are not thinking. He did not ask whether Jarek wanted to talk about Ilya. He set a pace that made thinking possible and speaking unnecessary. After 3 turns, the pear seller's cousin, thin man, quick eyebrows, stepped from a recess and put his palm against the wall as if to keep it from listening too hard. "Rat's been sniffing the den," he said to Varik in the voice of a neighbor describing the weather's mood. "Not your kind. The teeth kind. The one with the bent ear says there's coin if they find a door before you do." "Their coin will roll," Varik said, which is a way of promising to make a street slippery. The man nodded. "Also," he added to Jarek, "the children asked if the wire trick works with string." "It floats worse," Jarek said. "But it remembers fine, if you tie it around something that won't pretend to be anything else." The man blinked like a hen pecked by poetry and then grinned. "Right." They reached the den with no cultists at the lintel, which counted as a good evening. The chalk circle at the arch had acquired 3 new lines, one obviously drawn by a left hand that refused to believe in straight. Jarek touched the outer ring and felt it hum the faint call and response of his own band at his wrist. The quiet from the basin stitched itself into that small sound as if it had been waiting for a place to sit. "Talk," Varik said when the door had decided it was closed. Jarek leaned his head back and let the wall take some of the day. "Ilya was yours," he said. Varik did not flinch at the past tense. "For a season long enough to grow a pride and short enough to keep it from becoming a language," he said. He liked crowns because they were honest about wanting weight. He liked yes because it won most arguments. He learned fast enough to be dangerous and decided slow enough to make the learning someone else's problem. And the gauntlet. "Gild toy kissed by cold fingers," Varik said, disgust a sigh under the words. "A thing that plays with the parts of light the white coats do not invite to meetings. He's been shopping on floors that pretend not to exist." "Can he cut my chains?" Jarek asked, not afraid and not unafraid. He needed the shape of the trouble. "He can cut the songs if you let him set the key," Varik said. "You didn't." Jarek rubbed his wrist. The band had cooled, the thin ring was warm. "He called me a liar for tempering." "He'll call you a greater liar when you refuse to use him to excuse your next mistake," Varik said without malice. "Men who eat call men who cook weak. It makes the table easier to steal." Jarek let the idea sit until it made a shape he could put down. "He will come to the square," he said. "He will pick a higher step," Varik agreed. "He likes the kind of light that makes other men look flat." "And Mail will call him Prince," Jarek said. "She will call him anything that keeps her flame fed," Varik said. "She called you king until you laughed at the crown. Now she will put one on a man who kisses her hand and calls it faith." Jarek's stomach turned, not from hunger. "We need more anchors," he said. "Not all of them water and wire. Some of them people. Places." Varik's eye clicked once, softer than a compliment. "Say it like a plan. Teach what we can teach without making more of me." Jarek ticked the list with thumb on forefinger because sometimes hands make plans real. "Chalk and elbow. Breath in sevens and how to keep a ring floating when fear tries to sink it. Name your lane so it answers when you run. The pear seller. The apprentices Voss trusts enough to leave at levers. The kids who think circles are games until they keep them alive." Varik grinned the way a man does when a knife in his pocket sits easier for having been resharpened. "Put a sign on the door?" he teased. "Learn to be less stupid in a fire?" "Make it shorter," Jarek said. "And don't call it mine." "Wise," Varik said. "If it has your face, someone will sell tickets." They began that same night, because waiting invites a seam to open where a decision could have been. Varik sent a boy to fetch 3 children who had too much time and not enough places to put it. The pear seller locked her stall with a piece of string that looked like it had made bigger promises and came anyway, pear knife in belt. Voss did not attend. She would not insult her men by making training look like a hobby, but 2 apprentices drifted in on the excuse of checking a valve that did not live anywhere near the den. Jarek showed the wire ring and the band and then set them both aside. He drew circles on the floor with chalk and then made the girl draw them better. He set a bowl of water in the middle, and every time a ring sank, he made someone laugh until it floated again, because mocking a failure is a good way to teach stubbornness. He taught 7-count breaths and how to set them quiet in the back of the throat so no one else could use the sound. He taught how to name a beam without saying the name out loud, because a word can live in a palm if you let it. The apprentices learned faster than they thought they would and slower than they liked. The pear seller learned slow as granite and carried everything away with her as if the room had handed her a baby she had not asked for and she had decided to raise it anyway. The children learned at the speed of spill and corrected the adults without malice when they forgot where to thicken a line. When they were done, Varik sent everyone away with a pear or a knife or a rumor to carry, because empty hands try to fill themselves with wrong things. The den grew quiet in the way rooms do after work, not the way graveyards do. The hunger padded closer, curious. "What is this?" it asked, not in words, but in the way a fire leans when another fire is lit nearby. "You feed without feeding me?" "I'm busy," Jarek said to it, not unkind. It huffed, which could have been laughter, and went to stare at the door like a cat pretending not to want out. The last guest was the first to come on purpose. Voss leaned into the arch with her visor up, face cooled by late steam. She looked at the chalk rings without stepping on them, which earned her respect she did not ask for. "You will make more trouble for me," she observed. "Yes," Jarek said. "Good," she said, "and it might have been." She set a small slate on the bench. No one I know officially left this by a pipe I pass on my way to not noticing things. It says there will be a demonstration at the Iron Choir." Her mouth flattened. "Ilya likes music." "The Iron Choir has chains," Varik said. "Long ones. They sing if you pull." He glanced at Jarek. "He will want a stage where a net looks like art." Voss nodded. "If he turns a door into theater, my men will be called the hecklers. They will be told to leave." "Will they?" Jarek asked. "No," she said. "But they will have to pretend not to be there until the moment they are." She tapped the slate. "Tomorrow." 3 bells after mid she left as if she had not come. The chalk circles hummed once more and then settled into floor as if they had always been there. Jarek cleaned the bowl, wiped the chalk dust into his hands, and rubbed it together until his palms felt like work. "You don't have to go," Varik said, which meant you have to go. "I know," Jarek said. He looked at the band on his wrist, at the thin ring that had taught him to float his hands above his bones, at the chalk, at the knives Varik kept clean because being ready is its own kind of witness. He breathed to 7 without counting. Tomorrow would be a stage. Ilya would be a mirror held at a cruel angle. Mail would smile as if the fire had been her idea. Voss would stand where duty and choice shared a narrow plank. The gangs would sell opinions by the slice. The apprentices would learn by watching men make mistakes too large to hide. The hunger would sing. Jarek lay down and let his back find the place on the floor his body had learned to trust. He closed his eyes and listened for the basin's quiet under the den's noise. It was there, thin as thread and strong as chain. "We make tools," he said, to the room, to the band, to the hunger, to the morning. "Not thrones." The den did not answer. It didn't need to. He slept, and when he woke, the city had already started pulling its chains to tune the song the Iron Choir would sing.